I just had a fantastic conversation with Terrell Clemons, who is the deputy editor of SALVO Magazine. We talked about her article here, which is called The Sexual Insurrection. It's very fascinating. Let's get into it. Just begin with what I was curious about when I read it is, how did you first hear about what they call the orgy dome? How did you first come across this?
This is kind of funny. It was the organization that the article is about is called Open, Organization for Polyamory and Ethical Non-Monogamy. I think I said that right. Open for short. And it is kind of funny how they came across my radar. One of the senior editors for Salvo, we have like an editorial board, they're senior editors and they review everything. One of them received an email from Open from this new guy. I think his name is Brett. It's in the article. I don't have it in front of me. Received an email from him. It was just like a marketing email that was telling him about Open and asking if he wanted to. Actually, I have it here. I did get it out here. He said, I wanted to see if you'd be interested in a story on how polyamory and ethical non-monogamy have grown from a fringe relationship practice into a movement that's authentically organizing for recognition. And he sent that email to the senior editor, and the senior editor sent it to me and it's like, I don't know who this guy is, but I guess it's something to do with Salvo. Do you know who it is? And I didn't, but I looked it up and I thought this would be a good thing to write an article on. So that's how it came across my radar.
That is very interesting. So what is kind of the nutshell of what this group is up to? And if you can kind of, just tell the quick story of, in particular, what they're doing at Burning Man, I thought was really interesting. And I'm also curious to kind of unpack with you, what does this say about our culture in terms of how something like this could even ever catch fire? No pun intended.
Well, yeah, polyamory literally means multi-loves. So, I mean, that's kind of nice. We're all about love, right? We all like to have love and we want to have love relationships with a lot of people. But in a highly sexualized culture, there are those who really equate love with sexual activity and sexual expression. And polyamory is basically, as marriage has become less of a norm, sexual relationships with multiple people has become more of a thing that people do. And Open, OPEN, they just launched in 2022, so it's fairly new. And what they really seem to be about, and I'll come back around to the orgy dome in a minute, but what they really seem to be about is normalizing it. Traditional America, with its Christian roots, even though we have lost a lot of those underpinnings, still kind of look down on what used to be called promiscuity and people having multiple sexual relationships with multiple people. And those who engage in it don't like to be looked down on. So it seems like Open is just all about changing people's thinking about it and making it more normalized. And the orgy dome is something that has been around for, it's been around for a few years. And two of the three founders of this organization called Open were also the founders of what they call the orgy dome, which is, they call it, if I remember right, a theme park at Burning Man. Burning Man is this annual, some people think of it as an art festival, but it's just really like a big outdoor music festival, art festival, all this kind of stuff out somewhere in the Nevada desert that they have every year for roughly a week or something like that. And the orgy dome is something that was then brought alongside of it, or part of it, that, I mean, it's an orgy dome. I mean,
How can you put it?
I mean, I don't want to go see it. They don't put, well, I mean, they have a website. It's not quite X-rated, it's a website. But they talk about having that as a theme park where people who, how do I say this? Sex is really a good thing, but it has its context where it can be a good thing, and it has its context where it can be harmful. And the orgy dome is It's just kind of a place for a sexual free-for-all.
One thing that I think is so interesting is that the institution of marriage, which has existed for thousands of years, which really is a derivative of scripture itself. I mean, every Christian wedding you go to, you're reminded that marriage was invented by God, and that's true. And what's interesting to me is that marriage actually protects women more than any other context in which sexual activity might occur, where you have a commitment, where you have a period of time where both partners are vetting each other and determining whether or not they will be compatible with each other on every possible level. And then you have that covenant commitment, which means we're going to take this seriously. We're holding both of each other's feet to the fire in front of God to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. And you look at that and you think that that would be something that the progressives would be all about, because it is so protective of women as the fairer vessels, if you will. To me, when I look at this orgy dome, it seems to fly completely in the face of, for example, the Me Too movement. It seems to be such a dangerous thing when you hold up the idea of, it's basically consent as the only sexual ethic. As long as there's consent, then everything goes. And I just think that that is such an opportunity for manipulation and abuse. And it's shocking to me that this organization, Open, doesn't see things that way, where marriage is barbaric and antiquated and limiting, and the orgy dome apparently is the location where all good things can happen. It just seems to fly in the face of not only logic, but in the face of what I would hope would be everyone's aspiration, which is human flourishing and human rights. This seems to really work against that, which is why I thought your article was so provocative.
Yeah, you would think the feminists would be all over something like that, but they're not. I was reading a book not too long ago called Against the Sexual Revolution, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. And it's not written by a Christian, it's written by a British woman who has been a rape counselor for quite some time. And in all of her research and her experience dealing with women who have been sexually assaulted, she looked and sociologists will quantify, like they'll use this term called sociosexuality, which basically it's a metric of where people like, how much people like to have sex with multiple partners or with one partner only. And men come way down more on the high sociosexuality. Men tend to be much more sexually adventuresome, all other things being considered, than women. And so, like you say, the orgy dome really caters to someone who just wants to have sex but doesn't really want to have a relationship, whereas women tend to be more about the relationship, and women thrive better in a situation where there's commitment and there's monogamy. And that's not even to speak about the children. One fact of biology that tends to get lost in the sexual revolution is that sex is the way children are made, but children need parents. And monogamy is, since the beginning of humankind, regardless of how you think humankind came about, beginning of humankind, monogamy is the best setting for children.
That's such a good point.
A protective upbringing, and for women to have a protection around them so that they can raise their children and take care of their children.
That's such a good point. When you take away loyalty and commitment from the sexual engagement, you open up the possibility where, like you said, sex does lead to children. So who is going to be viewing those children like a mother and a father view them in a situation where you have 10 sexual partners that are all in this open thing? And that just seems like such a recipe for child abuse to me, where you already have, like you said, these adventuresome characters, and now you take away any of the strings, any of the ties that would naturally bind people together. You open everything up, you take away all of the boundaries and all of the attachments that make parents great at what they do, and it just seems like such a disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the news item from maybe less than 2 weeks ago was the shooting in Colorado Springs
Hmm.
at a LGBTQ club. You may have seen that.
Hmm.
And a guy walked in around midnight and killed 5 people, injured some 25-ish more. And turns out they identify as non-binary, and had the horriblest, saddest, most chaotic upbringing. Parents divorced soon after he was born. And then when he turned 16, he legally changed his name to distance himself from his father. He didn't even live with his mother. Sometimes he lived with legal guardians for a while, and then he lived with grandparents for a while, and then he got to be age 22 and identified as non-binary. But I mean, I look at that, he's responsible for his actions, but we look at that and I see how sad it is that he did not have his mother and father to raise him in a stable, emotionally healthy upbringing. And that's what marriage has always been. It's not about it's about the well-being of children and the well-being of the perpetuation of a civil society and the raising of the next generation, so that they can know who they are, and so that they can have people who love them and are there for them, and not just be left to the whims of what's going on around them.
I think it's so vital to do exactly what you're doing, which is just pointing a light on groups like Open that are doing things like this, because the truth is that the Pandora's box is already open culturally. We already have done that. We've already stepped outside of God's idea of what marriage is. And the problem with that is that it really is the Wild West now. And so I think that as more and more bizarre aberrations of the good and the beautiful and the true come about in society, I think pointing a light on them, like you've done in this article, and saying, this is who this group is, this is their worldview, this is what they're all about, and also this is in case it's not obvious, this is the danger of this, and this is really the risk associated with this ultimate freedom, value that seems to exist in groups like this. There really is a tremendous danger attached to that as well. I was first thinking of it for women, but you brought up a great point, which is that extends also obviously to children as well, in a really significant way. So I wanted to touch on, before we wrap up here, I wanted to also touch on their Facebook petition, because I thought that was also very interesting. So tell us about the same group, Open, that has the orgy dome at Burning Man. They're also on Facebook, and what are they up to?
Isn't that funny? One of the first things that they did, well, like I said, that they want acceptance and they want to change other people's opinion. So they petitioned Facebook. It's still out there. They actually have it, and it's been out there probably for 6 months or something like that. And let's see, where was it? Remove Facebook. It's funny the way they use language. Remove Facebook's limits on love. And they wanted Facebook, it used to be that Facebook, if you're in a relationship, your Facebook would have your relationship status and it would say who your partner is or whatever. And they wanted Facebook to open it up so that you could list multiple partners and have your multiple relationship partners acknowledged in public on Facebook, as if Facebook is the be all end all for affirming people's sexual proclivities. And so that was what they did. And it was signed by, my goodness, here it is. This was June 16th of 2022. And it was an open letter exclusion of non-monogamous relationships from the Facebook app's relationship status feature. And then it was signed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people. And some of those people represent organizations, for example, Chosen Family Law Center. And chosen family is the idea that, well, it's not a natural family, it's a family that you chose. And this is a really good study in language too, because when they talk about limits on love, nobody's limiting love. We're really not even limiting their ability to have sex with who they want to have sex with. We're just not agreeing that that's a good moral, ethical thing to do. They are free to do it. But that's what they did with Facebook. And at the last time I looked, even though it had been out there, it's been out there for close to 6 months now, they had maybe like 200 signatures. So it's not really gaining traction. And that's good to see.
That is good to see.
But it seems so silly too. Do they need Facebook to do this for them?
It's like any anything that can be changed should be changed, and any little barrier that exists should be knocked down. Seems to be the modus operandi for a lot of these types of groups. It's such a bizarre thing. To your point, what does that really accomplish to have a single option, a dating option, a married option, and in a relationship with 10 other people? Like, what does that really even achieve? But I do think that it's indicative of the broader point, which is that like I said, every barrier, every encumbrance, every sense of a moral boundary needs to be obliterated. It seems that seems to be the task at hand. And any time that you can exert a little bit of power, a little bit of a petition, make some type of ground in a particular area, just do it. It seems to be just knock on every door until the whole house comes crumbling down. And I think this story, although luckily there's only, like you said, 200 people, but I do think that it's indicative of that ambition, let's say, that exists.
Yeah, they talk about, stigmas, and I mean, there have been movements to try to remove stigmas from all kind of things. Some have been well-meaning, and a lot of people go along with them in well-meaning ways. But stigmas kind of exist for a reason. I mean, we do still have a stigma about adults approaching children for sex, and we have that there for a reason, and for a good reason. And mainstream America, I think, still does have a stigma about people who have group sex. And I think that's there for a good reason. I think these people it's fine for them to do what they're doing. I think it's good for us to be talking about it and pointing it out, and then making the case unapologetically for why monogamy is a really good thing, and it benefits women and children. It really benefits men too. But I think it even more so. It benefits women and children, and it serves the best needs of everybody. But the women and children are the one who can get run over first.
Absolutely.
If sexual appetites are allowed to run rampant, women and children are the ones who tend to get. I mean, it harms everybody, but women and children do get run over first and the most.
It is interesting. I don't know if there's a show, very popular show, Sister Wives.
I've seen talk about it. I have not seen it.
I'm sad to admit that my wife is actually watching through it, and it's partially like watching a train wreck. She can't look away because she's like, how is this even a thing? And she's analytically, she's studying it, whatever. But it is interesting because that show, it basically is an apologetic for polygamy in a very subtle way, because it shows how normal they are. It shows how relatively healthy the relationships are. And they've kind of plucked this one, probably certainly statistical outlier family to highlight as an example of how this is, just another way that people can live, and they kind of frame things in that way. People are used to mom and dad, but here's a man with 4 wives, but look at they're happy, and look at the children, and they kind of paint you this picture of the mutual respect and love, and it's very much a normalization of polygamy, even though technically polygamy is illegal. But the way that they kind of work around the law and all that, it shows that as well. And I think that it's interesting because that's also just an example of our culture just kind of bucking against the standards that are ultimately derivative of the Bible. And I think that we have basically, like I said, opened up that Pandora's box. And now that we've done that, I just don't see any reason why anything should stop until we go to the next level and to the next level. I don't see any reason why, like you're writing about in your article, polyamory wouldn't be normalized. I don't see any reason why even pedophilia won't end up being normalized, or at least why we would not head in that direction now that we've opened Pandora's box.
There are those pushing for it. There already are. And the logic of love is love, or a person is defined by what they are sexually attracted to. The logic of that says, there's nothing wrong with pedophilia. And that's, thankfully, we still have a problem with that.
Mhm.
But I think we should continue to have a problem with that and the stigma about that, because for the well-being of children. It is incumbent upon adults to protect children from those who would exploit them, and sexual predators will exploit them.
Absolutely. So if people want to read your full article, how can they do that? I know you
Oh,
mentioned it was on Salvo, but I want those who are interested in the subject matter. And I think your camera tilted up a second there. But I think, oh, there it is.
yeah. Oh, let's see. Let's go back a little bit. No, and the article is online. If you go to salvomag.com, salvomag.com, and pull up I believe, let me pull it up now and look at it, and scroll down slightly, and you can click on the current issue and see the articles that are in the current issue. Some of them are behind a paywall, sorry, but that one I can take out from behind the paywall, and you can put it in. Oh, I just moved my camera, didn't I?
I saw that it bumped up. Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
sorry, I did that.
That's okay.
And can put that out there. We have actually, Salvo has, I mean, our tagline is making sense of science, sex, and society. We have articles going back 16 years on sex. Some of them are pointing out the crazy things that are going on sexually, and some of them are just making a really good case for marriage is a good thing, and marriage and family is really a good thing. And even social science tells us that the most sexually satisfied people tend to be those who are in lifelong committed, often Christian or religious marriages. It's a good thing. It's not like we think sex is sexual boundaries are about taking away fun. It's no, sexual boundaries are about the best way for having sexually satisfying lives, and for everybody, for men and for women, and for the protection of children. So that was a long answer to a short question. Salvomag.com is where they can find it.
That's
And
fantastic.
there's lots of other good stuff there too.
I was going to say there's a lot of great content. I think the work that you're doing and the content that Salvo's putting out is very important. And I think that it also should be a wake-up call to other Christians to realize we have to be aware of what's going on in the world around us. We have to be willing to combat bad ideas with better ideas, which we have. But the time to get our heads out of the sand is now. The time to actually address the culture that we live in is now. And I love the work that you're doing. So thank you for
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. That's good to hear. That's what we're trying to do.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Well, thank you. Same to you.